Ladies and gentlemen, grab your gloves and get your compost ready. Stepping into the ring is the perennial powerhouse, the sultan of soil, the beast of the beds, where permaculture reigns, food grows wild, community roots run deep, and yes, the garden punts hit hard. Freedom starts in the soil. This is the Guerrilla Gardening Show.
Welcome back to the Guerrilla Gardening Show. I'm Mike with Mike's in the Garden, back with Sam from Central Florida Abundance. What's happening, Sam?
What's going on, Mike? We're hanging in there today. How you doing? It's the holiday season. It's cold, but it's also hot. It's hard to adjust to all this.
Yeah, it's a whirlwind for your immune system, especially I'm not as nasally as I was a couple days ago, but real quick before we get into today's video, just want to remind everyone these episodes are us talking about specific topics, plants, pruning. If you have a project, something you're struggling with, please reach out to us. You can comment on either of these channels. You can go to the descriptions, find our links, and the links, there'll be an email if you don't want to put your information out there publicly. And you can email us and ask us what you need help with, and we'll see if we can address it on a future video. Today, I'm really excited to, just from seeing your little slideshow of photos here, this looks like an awesome video, so I'll let you explain what we're going to get into today, Sam.
Yeah, today we're going to take a look at a food forest that a friend of mine installed, and I helped him. I went out there a couple times before he did anything and helped him look it over. And then what I got today is, I think, like 2 years in. Things have grown, things are pretty crazy, and now it's time for management. And that's what these photos are from. We went in there and did a big chop and drop day.
Nice.
So let me see. All right. You see this?
Sweet. Yeah, this looks awesome.
So this is a food forest in St. Cloud, Florida, and it was made by my friend Enrique at Rooted Solutions. Um, Amazing guy, really in touch with nature. He put a lot of thought into this system. Um, and so the whole system we're looking at, there was a square parcel of land in front of a house, and the homeowner said he wanted a food forest there. Something that's got a lot of productive species, but mostly perennial things that, once they're planted, they're just going to continue to grow. So in those systems, you end up with a lot of other species on top of the perennial productive ones that are meant to accumulate biomass. And that's something that Enrique did a really great job with here. Another great thing that I love about this one is just the shape and the general layout of it. It's a circular design inside this square property. But inside the circle, it's divided up by all of these little pathways. And so it kind of just turns every portion into its own little bed. And you can kind of see that here. There's the three main pathways that are very wide, where equipment and tractors can drive through. But then there's also lots of smaller pathways through these beds that are really just meant for walking and make, access to the plants a lot easier. But mostly what we're looking at right here is all the biomass. And I think at this point, it had gone like probably 12 months since it had been pruned at all. And like I said, I think at this point it was like 2.5 years old. So you get a lot of growth in that 12 months.
Yeah.
And so you see we got the tractor out there. We're going to be pruning some trees. This eucalyptus tree, we top those so that they can branch more laterally. and provide some shade and canopy once they reach this mature height. Um, there's also lots of Napier grass in here. That's a big biomass producer, along with the bananas. They've created a ton of biomass. You can even see, down below these bananas, how they've just covered the soil with their leaves. And then we've also got Mexican sunflower throughout the system, which after this day turned into almost a regrettable choice because after a year, the Mexican sunflowers are just not, they're not easy to prune. That takes a large part of the day just cutting those down. Um, but I'll go through the pictures here, and I've got some pictures of the surrounding area, because we really took into account, where we were. Um, this forest garden is really meant to be an extension of the existing area. And I mean, the plant species are different. There are a lot of native species in here in the understory. But the bananas, the mangoes, the avocados, you're not going to find those around here. Um, so this is a really nice shot just
Yeah.
of the overall shape. So here you can see the pathways, um, and they're not even straight amongst themselves. They have a bit of curvature. He could tell you the math behind this shape.
Okay.
If you go check out his pages, I'm sure he's got, detailed of how he came up with this design, but I think it's gorgeous. And then also in this shot, you can kind of see there's a gate here, but
Oh
there's a
yeah.
fence that surrounds this whole square property. And the fence is about 8 feet tall, and it's a deer buster fence.
Okay.
Because this is a rural part of St. Cloud, is still very forested, so there's a lot of deer, a lot of things that are coming in here that are eating some of the fruit trees. So that fence was put up preemptively because they knew that was going to happen. And now it's kind of become, you can see it in the back of this shot. That's the
Yeah.
fence, but it's really just a wall of plants.
Okay.
There's some plants planted along the fence that'll eventually, take its place. Because, I mean, even a metal fence, after 50 years, they're gonna lose a lot of their power.
Hmm.
But by that time, the shrubs and the trees that are planted along this are gonna create quite the barrier, and they'll last for, 100 years. You can see more of the fence over here. Um, right outside the fence, this is actually vetiver grass or actually, I think it might be Fakahatchee grass that Enrique planted on this bank that was a dugout channel. And the homeowner was like, I've got erosion. I've got erosion. What do I do? I keep throwing sod on it and it just washes away. And Enrique goes to him and is like, you're using the wrong kind of grass. So he planted this hedge here, and then that just solidified that bank.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, this is another section, and you can really see how dense it is. All of these little beds, around. There's one in the back here, all up in the sides. They've got their own plants. I can make out the Jamaican cherry right here. This
Okay.
one's an olive tree. We've got uh something sad. Maybe it's Chaya. Who knows? There's a plum right here. Obviously, you've got all the bananas,
Hmm.
mulberries somewhere in there. I couldn't point to where they are, but I know they're in there. This is the other side. There's a coconut tucked in there. St. Cloud is pretty warm, but this site is also very wet, and so that made it really good for the coconuts. So I think there's some smaller ones mixed in, but that's the largest one that's there now.
What are these large trees all the way to the left, and then there's another big tall one on the right?
So that's a eucalyptus. All of those are I think they're supposed to be rainbow eucalyptus.
Okay.
They were there before he started to make this.
Okay.
And they were planted with the idea to be used as biomass, but weren't the
Maintained for the
yeah,
use of
basically, the
biomass.
concept of how to use them for biomass
Yeah.
was just like, okay, they're there. What do they do?
Yeah.
So once Enrique came in, he started pruning them, but I mean, they're like 50 feet tall now.
Yeah.
So
They look
it
really
becomes a
tall.
lot harder. Um, but still the bottom branches, the leaves. I think on the right side here, so somewhere in this bed, there's dragon fruit, and they were planting the dragon fruit up the sides of the eucalyptus trees because
Hmm.
they're just, those straight poles, and they have their lateral branches. So once the dragon fruit gets up to there, it can droop over. Um, but you work with what's there, and then, I mean, really the key is just to fill every space with, diverse plantings. So, I mean, there is still a ton of lawn, like turf grass in this area. Um, and that was requested by the homeowner. He liked it, and so it was left. And it just adds to the diversity at this point. Could those areas of soil, be better? Probably, but you have to drive somewhere, if you're gonna
Sure.
have large equipment. So, as long as it stays, that's fine. Um,
It looks
this
like it's
is,
well maintained. So is any of it used for mulching or biomass itself?
you know, funny enough, at this point, when we showed up on this day, it was, I mean, it's crazy to think about, but it was so overgrown. And, you know, I mean, the plants are tall, the biomass was tall, and you can see the rest of the property here. It's very neat and tidy.
Very, yeah.
The homeowner was at a breaking point. He was ready, literally told us he was ready to burn it all down. He was like, I don't know what to do with it. It's too crazy. Uh, you know, what what do I do with this mess? And so I'm going to skip over a few pictures here. You can see kind of the surrounding area, trails that are off. That's like a fishery. Um, but then we get to here. And so you can already see kind of a stark contrast between these beds and these ones over here.
Sure.
And so this is after a long day of chop and drop. I think there was four of us out there that day, and we did half of this food forest. Um, and I mean, you know, all of that brown is just material that's been deposited onto the ground, you know, carbon that's being put back into the soil. It's nutrients for those plants. And so this is a little pan around that I did of the area that we cut. And I mean, this is a good shot of it. I mean, this was the spot we were looking at before. This is that olive tree right here. This is
Hmm.
that sad, sickly little, I don't even know what it is. Now that I see it, I think it's a the edible leaf hibiscus, like the salad tree
Huh.
that has just never been pruned or harvested from and is just scraggly. But you can see now, the intentional plants. There's canna lilies down here. There's pineapples every couple feet. There's a loquat trees. All the fruit trees are out now.
Mm.
We've even got that's not a fire bush, but it's some kind of flowering herbaceous plant. Um, you know, it's very defined. You can see what's supposed to be there, and all of that stuff now still looks pretty good, save that salad tree. Uh, so it's just going to explode after, all of this organic material has been deposited. And it did. You know, he one of the complaints that he had about 6 months after this, because we do, we follow up with him, see what's going on, and he was upset that he was harvesting all of these mangoes and bananas, and he didn't know what to do with them. And so, sometimes people are just not going to be happy anyway, but he kept up with this as much as he complained. And I think it's because, you know, it just provides so much. Even when we were out here, chopping this, he was out there with us. We were snacking on mulberries, we were snacking on Jamaican cherries. Um, you know, there's sugar cane out there. You get too hot, we break off a sugar cane stem and gnaw on that a little bit. So I'll play this video and we can just kind of pan around and see, loading things up into the tractor. Having that was kind of a vital resource for pruning some of these trees. This is the other bed. Look at this mango tree right here.
Mm,
And that was planted, 2.5 years before this, probably in a 7 to 10 gallon. And now
okay.
it's, I mean, 12 feet tall.
Yeah.
Uh, and this is just one of them. There's, I think, two more in this shot that I see. That might be an avocado, actually. There's a fire bush right in front of us.
Hmm.
But right here behind this avocado, this brown stump, that was the Napier. It was taller than that avocado tree, casting shade on it. And then it was all just cut down. It probably would have been cut lower if we'd had the tools to get through it at that point. But, you know, and then now we get to the side that hasn't been done yet. And you can see this Napier, you can tell there's some plants in here that we care about, but it's much more difficult to really, identify what they are.
Is that a moringa stalk or something? I just see like a tree that's just completely pruned.
Yeah, and so that is one of the eucalyptus. That's one of the
Okay.
eucalyptus that Enrique had planted when he did this. It was the one in that very first shot. You couldn't really tell, but it was very bushy, kind of in the, middle back of that shot. And we pruned it here at about 15 feet. And, now the idea is that you know, we capitalized on the lateral branching. Any branches that pop up from the top, those will be taken down, and we'll just, probably get two or three main branches coming off this direction. And then that's just going to provide shade. And also, drop its leaves, provide biomass. But we don't want it too tall because then it becomes, too hard to prune those extra branches that become unsturdy and, may pose danger to the system. Nothing's worse than planting a awesome new young seedling that you work so hard on, and then a eucalyptus branch falls on top of it.
Yeah. Is that a fast growing tree, the eucalyptus?
Very fast.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a couple years. I mean, I know the other ones you said were already there, but if Enrique planted that 2 years ago and it's already pretty hardy,
Yeah, I've
and you
got
cut it
a
down to 15 feet.
oh yeah, I've got a 15-foot one in my yard right now that I have not pruned yet. It's about time for it, but I planted it when it was about 6 inches tall, and that was this spring. It was like March I planted
Wow.
it, and now it's 15 feet tall and already cast shade. It's probably the tallest tree in my yard.
Okay.
Um, and the thing with the eucalyptus is they can they have some invasive potential because they reseed like crazy. Now, the way to keep them from doing that, if you're using them properly, you're not letting them make seeds. Because when they make seeds, they take a lot of nutrients from the soil to do that. So every time they flower, we should really be coppicing them, taking off all that biomass and returning it to the plants that we actually want. We don't want to grow 1,000 eucalyptus trees. I mean, unless you want to sell them, maybe. But here we're trying to grow bananas and avocados and mangoes. So we keep these eucalyptus from producing. We return the nutrients that they accumulate back into the soil, and feed it back into our desirable plants here. But yeah, this section, so I mean, this is unpruned, and we're still on in this shot, we're probably 10 feet off the ground. So you can
Wow.
imagine standing in this. It's kind of, I mean, it feels like you're in a jungle. Not necessarily like the forest that surrounds this property,
Sure,
but
but the edge of the jungle.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And for somebody who's used to just having a lawn, that can be kind of overwhelming. How do I maintain this? I can't run my lawnmower through here. Um, and so that was a big part of what we did. We showed him the tools, that are preferred for getting in and, knocking this stuff down. Um, he was blown away by the amount of work it took to do this. But the big part of it was that, this was we did half of it in a day. And so 2 days every 12 months. That's not so bad when you think about it like that. And it
Not at
really,
all.
it shouldn't be like that. If if he was out there, if he was able to get some help out there once a month, every other month, it would be, 2 or 3 hours a
Couple hours. Yeah.
day. Yeah. So, it's all the trade-off. And I mean, really the plants don't care how you do it. They're thriving out there. Um,
Now, do you know,
and you can
Sam, when um when this was installed, how did they, I'm assuming you said Enrique did it. So how was it
mhm.
mulch brought in? Was it cardboard laid down on top of those bedding areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this property flooded like crazy. Um, every time it rained, it's a real wet area, but also the soil here was super compacted. It had been turf grass for way too long. And it just flooded. The water had nowhere to go. Um, so the first thing that Enrique realized was that, some of these things we should mound these beds. The beds are probably about 12 inches taller than the native soil level. And it's a smooth transition, it's not a steep drop off. So the plant, it's not really a big deal for the plants. It really just helps their bases stay drier during the floods. Um, but then, to combat that compaction, he tilled the ground to start with to break it up. Because, I mean, really, when you're starting with poor soil, tilling can really help. You don't want to rely on tilling. And usually, if you're going to till, it's like a one and done thing. And that's how this was. He tilled them. And I don't know for sure. Maybe he cardboarded. I think maybe he did. He definitely deep mulched and then he cover cropped the mulch. He
Okay.
had daikon radishes, I mean, sweet potatoes, peas, mustard greens. It was like a winter season. And so he did like a winter cover crop. Um, and then they came through, and I wasn't there for this part of the process, but I assume they probably mulched some more to terminate the cover crop, and then they went ahead and planted their first round of stuff into that.
Okay.
Um,
So
so,
a lot of prep initially,
oh yeah.
and then so it was probably prepped, and then days, weeks, even months later came back to get the actual
So
perennials in there.
yeah, it was when you think about like when they first got out there and started doing work in this green field, it was probably 3 or 4 months before they were at a point where they were like, okay, the installation's done. It was an ongoing process. And really, that's the ideal way to do these things, you know, because you gotta, your first round of plants are always going to be the worst, especially when you're conquering, poor soil. And so your first round of plants should be just no effort, no really minimal cost. Throw the cover crops in, get the life going, start building some structure in the soil, uh, and just let that sit for a little bit. Let it grow, forget about it, and then come back to it once they've done their work. You know, get rid of that. You don't even have to get rid of them all. A lot of times you can just plant into the cover crops depending on what you got. But then you can put your perennials in, and they're going to have a much better chance. If he hadn't done that, there would the beds, even with tilling, water would have a really hard time, getting into the soils. He tilled the beds, but the plants are all through the beds and their roots want to grow, into the whole area around them. And so those cover crops, were, I mean, really throughout this whole thing, the rest just got mowed down and the grass persisted. But it improved the soil for everything. Really, cover cropping it probably even improved, those nitrogen fixers, those daikon radishes that break up the soil with their roots. They probably improve things for the grass.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
you can see, in some areas around this, it's kind of a mess as we get like into the woods. And I mean, I say mess, but really this is better. These are like native grass species, dog fennels, scrub oaks, saw palmettos over here. That was the big thing that we tried to convince him in the early days was to just keep this planting like uh take the plants of this wall and then just continue them on through this area. Keep the scrub oaks, keep the saw palmettos, plant them out through here. But, you know, you got to make compromises. And I mean, doing something like that's a lot of extra cost when the other option is just to do nothing. Uh,
Sure.
but, it's always in the cards. It can always be done.
Now, are those bee
So
boxes in the back? Those green, I don't think they're raised beds, but like on the back side of the property. Let's see, keep going, keep
these
going.
things back here,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they're not bee boxes. They actually are being used as raised beds.
Okay,
What they were originally were, I think, something to do with fish. I think they told me they were like fishery tanks. They're big
okay.
concrete tubs. And
Like an aquaponics system?
no,
Okay,
no, it like this whole place was a fish hatchery, where they would breed fish and sell them, bait, food stores, whatever. And so this guy just has 100 of these things on his property that he's never used, but they're
okay.
giant and concrete, and you can't really dispose of them.
No. You
And
paint
so
them green and make them look natural?
exactly. So for some things, like he's got some herbs and some tomatoes and annuals that one day he could grow in the ground, but right now when he, is only going out there occasionally, it's easier to protect them in these raised beds.
Right.
And so, you can, I mean, that integrated in, I'll say those raised beds probably get him out there in the food forest more than anything else because he
Okay.
goes out there to look at his tomatoes and then he's like, oh, and there's also a bunch of mangoes
Yeah,
today.
I can
Where did
just
those
be
come from?
pulling fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I think this system is a great example of
For
just
sure.
smart design.
Yeah,
Uh, it's really easy to work in it. Like it was a lot of work. I think I'm gonna take a guess, and I think it's like half an acre, this whole square.
okay.
Um, Big project. And that's what I told the guy, the customer. I was like, dude, you asked for this. I don't think you
Sure.
knew what you were asking for when you asked for a
No,
half acre
doesn't
food
sound like
forest.
it. Yeah.
But, that you got it. It's, there's just nothing wrong with it. Uh, but it's a learning process. And I'm sure that I mean it's still there. I know he didn't burn it down, so he's still doing stuff in it.
Yeah, yeah. That's great.
But yeah, I don't know if I have any other videos. Let's just see what this one was through the files.
Yeah, and then we can
Then we
share
can
Enrique's page.
yep, good way to close it out.
Yeah,
Just
it's a
a
great
nice
shot.
panorama.
I mean, I'm envious. I like the design, the layout. It's pretty awesome. So
And for $3 million, it can be yours.
I'm I'm not that far away, Sam. I'm
All right.
$2,999,000 away from so
Hey, they say the first step is the hardest, so that means every dollar you've already got the first dollar. So
yeah.
every next one will be easier. But yeah, so I'm happy to show off Enrique's. Now let's show people his page.
Yeah, I'll pull them up
So
here.
they want to go get his services. He's spending a lot of time in Brazil these days.
Nice.
I devote a lot of my time to the Florida Native Plant Society, and if there was a Brazilian, rainforest native plant society, I'd say Enrique would be the president. Oh, look at that. He was out there with Andre. Awesome guy. He's always smiling. Oh yeah, there's a
Looks
video
like
of
it right here.
some of his other projects. He does, edible landscaping.
Does he have his own
Look at
drone
that.
or is that courtesy of Central Florida Abundance? Wow, there's the pre.
That
Okay.
yeah. That was my early drone work right there. You saw that shaky pan.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful guy. And I mean, a wealth of information. If you're interested in, learning about connecting with nature, how to, live alongside natural processes, Enrique's your guy. If you can get a hold of him, he is in high demand.
Excellent. I love this episode. This is, assuming, going to be another great one. Where can someone find you, Sam?
Yeah, and if you want a food forest from somebody that's right here, you can reach out to Central Florida Abundance. I do property consultations, maintenance, and installations. And I also sell produce at igofarm.com if you're in Polk County. We got a minute left. Where are we going to check you out, Mike?
You are going to find me at Mike's in the Garden, anywhere that you can search for it and find it. And you should just go ahead and subscribe, like, follow, do all the things. Also for Sam as well. And we're spitting facts around here, but lots of other unique, funny, inappropriate designs, of course. So you can head over here and get yourself a shirt to support the channel. And that's about it. Another great one, Sam. We'll catch you again on the flippity flip.
See y'all next time. Hey, Mike.